Based on true events, a teenager enters an inappropriate relationship with a teacher but realizes he isn't the protector she hoped he was. In her bedroom, anxious teenager Elizabeth Thomas, or Beth, places her belongings in a backpack. Then, she hugs her younger sister, Lily, tightly and tells her she loves her. Before leaving the house, the teen tells her older sister, Dawn, to call the police if she isn't home by 9 p.m. 6 months ago, Beth starts at a new school where she first speaks to the guidance counselor. The woman asks about her home situation, and the teen explains that her father has custody of her and her 2 sisters but that she has an older brother named Ben, who has his own place. Beth says that their mother homeschooled them, and this is the first time she's attending a regular school. At lunch, another student rudely bumps into her and insults her family. That afternoon, Dawn tells Beth that their father won't be home until later, so she gets started with dinner. The kitchen light doesn't work, so she calls up her brother Ben to come over and fix it. However, to the teen's exasperation, he says he can't come by because he's headed to work. Later, while chopping vegetables, Beth accidentally nicks her finger, so she wraps it in a towel. The next day, Tad Cummins, the health science teacher, introduces the new student to the class. During lunch, the teacher sees Beth eating her food in the hallway, so he shares that he, too, had difficulty adjusting when he first started teaching because even teachers have cliques. So, he accompanies her to the cafeteria and encourages her to join a group of students who sometimes eat lunch in his classroom and assures her that they're nice. Beth approaches the table with Tim, Brandy, and Rachel, and the latter asks if her family are survivalists because it's the first time she's gone to school. Annoyed, the teen says her family aren't survivalists, and they continue eating their lunch in silence. After school, Beth misses the bus home, and when Tad learns she doesn't have a ride, he offers to drive her. In the car, the man shows Beth a picture of his grandchildren and then spots the wound on her finger. He stops the vehicle to grab a first aid kit in the trunk and places a bandage on her injury. Tad says he was in the military, and the first thing they learned was how to triage a wound. He mentions how she must feel a lot of responsibility taking care of her sisters with their mother out of the picture, and the teen wonders how he could have known those details. Tad explains that the teachers were informed of her situation. After pulling into the driveway, the man tells her to call him by his first name. The next day, Tim fetches Beth so they can eat lunch in Tad's classroom. There, the teen realizes her father didn't use gluten-free bread for her sandwich, so the teacher offers to swap lunches. That evening, the teen looks at Tad's pictures on his social media. At dinner, she teases Dawn for texting a boy, and their father, Ed, sternly tells them never to bring boys into the house. Meanwhile, Tad shares Beth's story with his wife, Connie, and suggests taking the students to church with them. Delighted, the woman kisses her husband and says she's always known he was kind-hearted. The next day, the teacher informs the teen that he and his wife have decided to take her to church with them. That Sunday, before entering the church, the couple gives Beth her own Bible. During the service, Tad compliments her dress and says she looks different outside school. She thanks him for taking her there and smiles as she listens to the choir. Days later, Beth finds Lily by the front steps with a bruise on her face. She says a girl in school made fun of their home situation, specifically how their mother lost custody, which led to a fight. The following day, the teen tells Tad what happened to her sister. She says she told Lily to ice her bruise and chose not to tell their father about it, scared he might scold her sister. Instead, Beth told Lily to stand up to her bully using her words. Tad admires the teen's maturity in handling the situation and then adds a creepy remark about how he knows she looks great without any clothes on. Stunned, Beth is left speechless, but the bell rings, interrupting their conversation. After school, she asks Rachel if she's ever had personal conversations with Tad. However, the student says she's probably only having these moments with the teacher because he feels terrible for her home life. The next day, in health class, Beth is still troubled by the man's strange comment, causing her to drop her book and interrupt the lecture. During lunch, the teacher entertains the students with tales of his time in the Special Forces. When the bell rings, Tad tells Beth to stay behind. Now alone, he apologizes for his uncalled-for remark yesterday, and she says it's okay and promises not to tell anybody. He says he got carried away because he can't stop thinking about how mature and special she is. Then, the man takes her hands and kisses her on the lips. The next day, Beth asks her father if he won't mind if she gets an after-school job. At first, Ed says she should concentrate on school because he's fine working double shifts. However, he eventually relents when she says that a lot of teens have after-school jobs, and the extra income means he can spend more time at home. At lunch, Tad overhears Beth talking to Tim about looking for a job, so he says he'll speak to his friend's daughter, who manages a restaurant. Later, Harriet, the manager, interviews the teen and says she can start tomorrow. The next day, the man congratulates the student for getting the job and tells her to come by his classroom at lunch. Hours later, he places a necklace with a gold heart pendant around her neck, leads her into a closet, and closes the door. After work, Beth sees that her brother is there to bring his sisters their dinner. When he learns she started an after-school job, he discourages her from continuing because he wants her to enjoy the full high school experience. At lunch the following day, Tad and the teen are inside the closet, where she shares her exasperation at how her brother thinks she has many friends at school. The man tells her to be patient since he wasn't the most popular kid in high school either. When the bell rings, they exit the closet, and Tad fixes his clothes. Then, he asks to use her phone and saves his number under Crystal. The teacher says her number is in his phone under Frank. When the student asks why they must be secretive, he explains people will keep them apart if they find out. Tad convinces her that their being together is what she wants, then kisses her. Unbeknownst to the pair, a student sees them from behind the door. The next day, Detective McClendon speaks to Beth and asks if there's anyone she can call to join her during the conversation. At the police station, Ben joins his sister as the detective informs them about how a student reported witnessing her and a teacher kissing in his classroom. When the brother asks which teacher it is, Tad passes by while escorted by the cops. The teen tells the detective that he sometimes gives her snacks and is always nice to her. She adds that he listens to her problems and feels he's the only person she can talk to. However, McClendon explains that if Tad's been engaging in inappropriate behavior with her, he's betrayed her trust. Later, when the teacher meets with Detectives McClendon and Roger, he firmly denies all accusations. He admits to giving the student a little more attention than others because of her situation at home. When the detective mentions how it's odd that the teacher took Beth to church, Tad says he only did so to bring comfort to a teen who's in a troubled situation. Eventually, the cops inform the man that he's forbidden from approaching or speaking to the student during the active investigation. That afternoon, Beth texts Tad about speaking to the police but promises she never told them any incriminating details. He responds that he needs to see her, so she says to meet at the restaurant's parking lot before her shift. In his car, the teen worriedly asks what'll happen now. He assures her that everything will blow over eventually and that they need to avoid each other for the time being. The next day, Rachel confronts Beth for tarnishing the teacher's reputation. After school, the teen leaves in Tad's car, and they drive away to another area. The student expresses anguish at the other students calling her names, so he tells her to stay strong and not let other people tear them apart. The following morning, the police prevented the teacher from entering the school and informed him that they knew he had driven Beth home yesterday because of the security camera. Later, the teen receives a text message from Tad suggesting they run away together. That evening, Tad texts the student to speak to him in the restaurant parking lot. In his car, he says they'll need to drive for a few days until they reach the coast. However, she's still apprehensive about their plan of running away, so the man reminds her that it was her fault they got caught because she got in his car outside school yesterday. Tad says he loves her and threatens to end his own life if she doesn't come with him. That night, the man texts her that they're leaving tomorrow. Beth says she can't leave her family, so Tad threatens to hurt her sisters if she doesn't cooperate. Meanwhile, the seething Connie gives her husband the silent treatment at dinner because of his suspension and the rumors she's been hearing around town. He lies, says he's driving to a job interview tomorrow, and asks if they can swap vehicles. So, the woman wordlessly drops the car keys on the table. The following day, the teen tells Dawn to call the police if she isn't home by 9 p.m. At the restaurant, Tad texts her that he's in Connie's vehicle outside. Beth opens the door and is about to tell the man she's not coming, but sees a handgun on the seat. So, despite her apprehension, she gets in the car, and they drive off. That night, a worried Dawn tells Ed what her sister said that morning. Later, outside the restaurant, the father speaks to the authorities. Harriet informs Detective Roger that Beth took a break at 7:30 p.m. and never returned. Then, the detective calls McClendon to inform him of the situation. In the station, Connie hands the police a note her husband left and reveals he emptied their bank account and took his handgun with him. Moments later, FBI agent Hammer arrives to speak to the detectives. He summarizes what they know. They have the note Tad left, implying he's heading northeast and that they haven't been able to track their cell phones. Meanwhile, the teacher and the teen stop on a bridge, where he tosses their phones in the river below. Days later, Tad instructs Beth to remove license plates from another car, which they'll use to avoid detection. That night, they check into a motel, and the man pays in cash. In the room, the teen puts on the glasses he bought and shows her that he shaved off his goatee. Then, he creepily leads her to the bed. In the police station, the detectives and Agent Hammer received security camera evidence of Tad in a gas station in Oklahoma. This means the pair is headed west, contrary to the man's note. Days later, in a different motel, the pair watch a news report of Connie's plea for Tad to stop running away and to drop Beth off somewhere safe. When the teen expresses that her family might be worried about her, the man says they can't because they'll both go to jail. He reminds her of when she swapped the license plates and says she committed a federal offense. The man says they'll have to flee the country, and because they can't board a plane, they'll have to use a boat to get to Mexico. The next day, Tad purchases a kayak, and the teen worries they might run out of money. As they carry the kayak, a beach patrol officer forbids them from getting in the rough water. Beth says they can try again tomorrow, but the teacher says the man already saw them and will probably see their faces on the news tonight. Eventually, they drive to a campground, and Tad tells Myron they're going to Brokenhead Ranch. Because they're low on money, the teacher asks the man for free gas so they can reach their destination. Myron advises them against driving at night and suggests they sleep in the campground and leave in the morning. Then, he hands Tad some money for gas. During the conversation, Beth, whom the teacher introduced as his wife Joanne, stays silent and keeps her sunglasses on. That night, Tad wonders if Myron recognized her and considers shooting the man, but the teen assures him he's worrying over nothing. At Brokenhead Ranch, Arthur welcomes the pair and informs them that everyone in the commune is vegan. He expects them to pitch in with the chores, and Tad promises they will. A week and a half later, the commune leader confronts the teacher about their failure to do their share of the chores while eating their food. Beth leaves the room, and a woman warns her that abuse doesn't just mean physical assault. Seconds later, Tad tells her that they're leaving Brokenhead Ranch. Soon, they drive to the campground office, and the teacher asks Myron if they can stay there for a few days, so the man points them toward a small cottage they can use. When Beth sees the shack, she complains about its dilapidated state, and the man says it'll have to do until he figures out their next step. Then, he pulls her close so they can do the deed. She refuses because she just wants to go to sleep. However, Tad reminds her that running away with him is what she wants. The next day, the FBI corners the teacher when he walks out of the shack. Then, they instruct Beth to exit the shed and handcuff her. Soon, the teen returns home and is overwhelmed by the reporters outside the house. Inside, the family welcomes Beth home with a warm group hug. Weeks later, Ben borrows some books from the library, which might help his sister. Outside the house, a reporter talks about how Myron was the one who reported Tad and Beth's whereabouts to the authorities. When Ben sees the news crew on the lawn, he demands they leave the property. Then, he heads inside, hands his sister the self-help books, and suggests she talk to a therapist. During the therapy session, Beth admits a part of her misses talking to Tad, so the woman says it's an effective grooming. The teen asks what it means, and the therapist explains that the teacher made her feel like he was the only person who cared about her and manipulated her into thinking that he only wanted what was best for her. Months later, the teen now lives with Ben and tells her brother that she's ready to get back to work now that she only has to go to therapy 4 times a week. Outside the donut shop, a woman confronts the teen and accuses her of ending the Cummins marriage and destroying their family. Later, her coworker Gina mentions how difficult it must be for her to go through life with people constantly judging her. Then, she says there's an online message board where past and current students of their high school continue discussing the case. After work, Beth visits the website and reads all the awful comments from people who call her a temptress who destroyed an innocent teacher's life. Suddenly, Ben calls her into the living room and informs her that Tad is pleading guilty. The next day, they meet with Sally, the case's lead prosecutor, who tells Beth that a victim impact statement could help increase the teacher's sentence. Then, the teen asks Mrs. Peters, the church organist, if she can join the choir. The woman says she and most of the townspeople were fooled by Tad's reputation as an upstanding citizen and tells Beth to attend the next practice. At the donut shop, while the teen works in the drive-thru, Rachel and her date drive up to the window, and she insults and demeans the employee. Fed up, Beth throws a beverage into the vehicle, which Gina witnesses. Later, Gina says she can't help her if Rachel files a report but acknowledges that the rude customer deserved a soda to the face. At the house, Beth recounts what happened to Ben, who says maybe giving a victim impact statement might help get her side of the story to the public and grant her the opportunity to say everything she wants to say to Tad. During the trial, the teen is called to the stand. At first, the trauma of seeing the teacher again makes it difficult for Beth to read her statement, so the prosecutor offers to read it aloud on her behalf. However, she finally musters up courage and speaks from the heart about how Tad chose her from the crowd because he saw how lonely and scared she was. She adds that after 2 years of slowly putting herself back together piece by piece, she can finally say that the man no longer holds power over her. Beth tells the judge that Tad deserves 38 years in prison, 1 year for each day he kept her away from her family. Defeated, the criminal can do nothing but hide his face behind his hands. On January 16, 2019, Tad Cummins was sentenced to 20 years in prison. In June of the same year, Elizabeth got married, excited for the new chapter of her life. However, to this day, some people still blame the teen for the actions of a 52-year-old man.